Hi, welcome to Tales from the Sky Lounge. It's a podcast about business, consulting, and venture investing. We get out there in the world, we talk to people who are making it happen, and we get their stories. If you can like and subscribe, it makes our producer James very happy. And he wanted me to mention that we have a sister channel, Speedrun, through Claude, where we talk about all things AI and practical aspects of it that can make your life and business go faster. So today's guest in the Sky Lounge, legendary Neal Miller. Hi, Neal. How are you?
Great, thanks.
So
Great
everybody
to be here.
knows Neal, at least around TechCXO. But Neal, who are you, and what are you working on these days?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm a partner at TechCXO. Was one of the early partners in the firm. I started in late 2006. I think it was partner number 5, and have had a career of 25, 30 years before that in technology. Started my career in public accounting. But right now, what I'm doing is I am sort of making the move towards, relaxation and retirement. I'm now a partner emeritus at TechCXO, which means I'm involved, but I'm not doing client work anymore. I'm still on the board of managers of the firm. And besides that, I am working on trying to improve my golf game, which was, not. I didn't spend enough time on that for many, many years. Getting a little bit better at it and playing a couple times a week. And my wife and I just recently purchased a property and home in Costa Rica, and we're starting to spend some time there, getting it ready to have friends and family who are lining up to to come down and visit.
Yeah, I've heard awesome things about Costa Rica. That's well deserved. That's an awesome place down there. Well, you mentioned a lot, and one of the cool things I think about your background story is, a lot of people, and in particular, we sit down for lunch and, we talk. Everybody knows Neal, and it's surprising how many people came through Neal Miller to get to, you know, TechCXO or an investor in Atlanta, or have had contact through that, that positive interaction. I guess you and I had a brief, I don't know, if not brief, but for me, it was 4 years at Higher IQ. So that was kind of fun. And then Joe Gruca was there for a minute. And then several other partners at TechCXO came through you. Are you surprised at how many people, come back around in your career? You probably have a million stories like that where you planted a little seed and then 5 or 10 or 20 years later, something comes back around where that person, there's an opportunity and you can play matchmaker again. How frequently do you think that happens?
Well, it's happened, I think, quite a few times over the years, and I think it started with the fact that I joined TechCXO early on, and I never wanted to do anything else, and it's been 19 years, and that's a long time. And the main reason was I used to get bored a little bit and, kind of start looking for something else. But, when you're working with 3 or 4 companies at a time and they're either, getting acquired or they're growing to a point where you help them hire a full-time executive, and you're kind of always, changing what's going on. I mean, it's a little bit like Groundhog Day, but with a different cast. And so it was just such a great fit for me that I always wanted, to tell everybody that I knew or liked, about it. And so, a lot of them were relationships that were clients. Higher IQ was one of my longest engagements, although it was, and didn't really kind of get the kind of traction and take off that we all wanted. But I was there for a long time, and yeah, Joe was there. There was like and two other CEOs, but after him during that time, and so Lewis Gump at Ellison Mobile. And recently joined us as a executive operations partner. We hired him as the CEO while I was there. I think one of the first ones was Greg Swain, who was the president of a company called AirSage that I got introduced to, and Greg and I, became friends and worked with him. And actually, one of my first trips to Costa Rica, he and his wife and a few other couples were there were like five couples, and over time he kind of left that AirSage as well, and we just stayed in touch. And he was kind of like, "I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing next," and I'm like, "You got to come to TechCXO." So it's just been that kind of a thing, right? And I I've been around the Atlanta technology community since 1983. So I know a lot. I guess I'm old. I know a lot of people, and I've worked with close to 70 companies between TechCXO and prior to TechCXO.
Wow.
Most of those, over 60 of them with TechCXO. So
Wow. That's awesome. Well, so talk about your origin story. How did you, so at some point you got to build up credibility to be the fractional CFO. You started, how did you get your start as in the financial world? Um,
yeah, I graduated from Georgia State University, and immediately went to work with what is now KPMG. It was Pete Marwick and Mitchell at the time, the big eight accounting firms, and in their audit arena. And early on in my career, I got assigned to work on first ever audit of a little bitty company called American Software, which was based in Buckhead, and it was basically owned by two entrepreneurs who had been part of the management team at MSA
okay.
back in the 60s. And during some of MSA's reorganizations, they left and started this company. And they in 1981, 82, 83 was one of the first mini IPO booms. I mean, it would probably look like an ant today compared to IPOs, but you had companies like Home Depot and Healthdyne and some other, early stage technology companies that were starting to go public. And so I got assigned to work on the American Software audit, but they were really looking to go public. And so they went public in February of 1983. And I mean, you couldn't really do this today because it was I think there were $8 million in trailing revenue,
Wow.
and, and went
Oh, man.
and went public. And at the time, there was really no accounting department there. They had some clerical people and all of that, and so me and the other auditors were really doing the books and so on. And like I said, it was a little bit of the Wild West at the time, but those were the rules, and they had a very successful IPO. Again, the numbers are nothing compared to what things are going today, but I think they raised like $24 million on I don't know, maybe $100 million valuation or thereabouts. And so a few months they didn't have a CFO. They hired a controller, and he hired me basically away from KPMG to be the assistant controller. I think I was like 25 years old at
Wow.
the time, and because I knew everything about the accounting, and so I got their systems and all set up. Eventually. as I mentioned, I kind of got bored a little bit, and so they had some software products that were financial in nature, and so I became a what they I think call now a sales engineer. I would go out with the salespeople and demonstrate the products and help answer questions and RFPs and things like that, and um, and then also help at those in those days we you got assigned to the prospect slash client, and I helped them with the implementations as well. And so I did that for a little while, and then a regional sales manager took me to lunch one day and said, "I have a sales opening, and I think you'd be really good in software sales." And I'm like, "I don't know anything about sales,
Okay.
selling." Just believe take my word for it, you'll be good. So anyway, I went on a 6 year diversion and was carrying a bag and selling
No
enterprise
kidding.
software in Georgia and South Carolina, and the textiles and the carpet mills and manufacturing environments, utility companies, all of that that kind of stuff. So I had a very good. Yeah, I was good at it. I mean, I wasn't a superstar, but I wasn't on the on the bottom rungs. So, but one day in I guess it was 1990, right after right a few months after my son was born, the CEO, Jim Edenfield, he was one of the two founders of the company, called me into his office, which made me nervous because he never did that. And he told me that the CFO had resigned, and that he was looking for a new CFO, and he thought that I might be a good candidate. And that was kind of shocking to me, but yeah, but he said, well, you know the company, you know the products. I see like the CFO is his real main role is being outward looking with Wall Street, and in those days you went around and literally met with people in New York and Chicago and San Francisco and Europe and all of that to kind of pitch the pitched the stock, and he's like, you've been selling our products, so I think you can do it. So, and
Wow.
we had an existing accounting department which I had started to build before I moved into those other things. So that was that was he gave me my first opportunity to be a chief financial officer, and at the time I was like, well, I could probably do pretty well in sales, but at the time, American Software was about $75 million in revenue. Company had grown dramatically, and was on Forbes, fastest growing companies list for 5 years in a row. And so it's like that is really, a big opportunity out there. So and so that's how I made the move into that, and had was the CFO of a couple of other public companies. One called Cinelec, which was interactive voice response technology. It was actually a reverse merger of two companies. One in Cinelec was in Phoenix, Arizona, and they merged with a company in Atlanta, but the management team from the acquired company was basically taking over from that. And Nora Mosley Partners had been the venture capital firm behind the Atlanta company,
Okay.
and the CFO that was um, in Phoenix didn't want to move to Atlanta, so he took another job. And so through some of my connections, I got introduced into this opportunity, and that's where I started my relationship with Nora Mosley Partners, which has been a great relationship for
Yeah.
years and years. One of the longest operating venture capital firms based in Atlanta, if not the
Oh yeah.
longest venture
Yeah.
capital firm. So yeah, and so and then I did after that I did a private venture backed company. And then my third public company was Cypress Communications, which was the in-building local exchange carrier, where they leased your phones and your internet and all that on a by the person, by the drink type of environment. We sold that in 2005, and I kind of puddled around doing a few little things here and there, doing a little consulting, uh, then I just and basically was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and so I did what everybody who's not clear what they want to do. I went to the mountain and I talked to John Yates.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
And yeah, no, his name has to come up in in my story. So, John said, "Well, what do you want to do when you grow up, Neil?" And I was like, "Well, I had done some consulting. I really like doing it, working with multiple clients, but I don't really want to do it on my own, right? Because when you're working, you're not selling. When you're selling, you're not working." And John said, "Well, do you know Kent Elmer and Mike Casey over at TechCFO?" And I knew Mike a little bit. We were in both CFOs of public companies, and we're at the various events. I didn't really know Kent, and so John made the introduction, and that was 19 plus years ago.
Wow, that's so awesome. Well, so when you got to Tech CFO at that point in time, and that's about the time that I got introduced to the company. A couple years after that, I'd started a company down at ATDC in Atlanta, did Georgia Tech, and got some investors. And then they said, "Hey, you need a CFO," and I said, "I don't know anybody like that." They said, "No problem, we got a guy." And it turned out to be Eric Freustat, and he was Tech CFO at that point too.
Hmm. Yeah.
But like one of the companies that was in our kind of cohort of entrepreneurial, venture or entrepreneurial startups at that time was Cloud Sherpas, which I know you kind of drew that straw, and you were their CFO. And I can remember sitting around, when the three of them were just in a nothing, card table situation, in a rented office with nothing, and going, man, I don't know how this is gonna scale. And then, boy, did they. Do you want to tell us that story, or at what point did Michael and those guys find you?
Well, I'm going to use the same name another time, but
Okay,
John Yates
okay,
called me up and he said, "I just had this meeting with this young guy. The name is Michael Cohn, and he just quit his job, and he's got a couple of partners, and he wants to start this company, something about bringing companies into cloud solutions, and moving them off of Microsoft's, in-house AS400s and all of that kind of stuff." And he basically said, I'm not 100% sure I understand what they're trying to do, but they need help and they need to raise some money, stuff like that. So, I gave him your name. And so, I called Michael, and we had coffee at a Starbucks in Sandy Springs on Roswell Road on the Monday morning after the Friday that was his last day at his prior job. And he and his two partners, the two partners were still working at their jobs, and Michael was sort of just trying to get things organized. And so we literally met in his basement, and he had his second child during the first couple of months, which I thought was very brave of him to quit his job and all of that, and while he was expecting a child, and we kind of whiteboarded out all of that stuff, that was going to need to be done. And this was like the spring of 2008. And so obviously we started putting together the materials that you need for going out to try to raise capital and all of that kind of stuff. And in through the summer. And as many of us know, there's really no venture deals that are done in the summer, and or new deals done after like Thanksgiving until the middle of or like January. So it was like, okay, we got to get ready to go out like early September and get started with all of this. And so, but the world was crumbling,
Yeah, oh yeah.
yeah, financially, and so it was very difficult. And so I think Michael was. I think it was something through the ATDC or whatever, but somebody got a golden ticket to present at Venture Atlanta, and so Michael won that. I guess it was the early stage or startup
Yeah,
stage or something. Right?
it was I had the other golden ticket.
Okay.
So that year. So it was Cap Venture, I think, was like a feed-in thing, and then we all
Right.
pitched off, and then yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry. That was exciting.
So
That was a hard year.
years later, Michael was on the stage at Venture Atlanta and said, "Does anybody remember October of 2008 when I when I presented?" He said you could hear a pin drop in the room. And so anyway, so things were looking dire because nobody wanted to talk to him, right? Nobody. And and I think part of it was like the business model was so going to be so different and unique, and it was dependent on larger companies. I mean, large meaning hundreds of users, companies taking this leap to cloud, and this is the 2008, right? So a lot of people didn't know what the cloud was at that time, and so so I helped raise I think it was about 175 or $200,000, what today would be called a safe, but it was convertible debt, friends and family, mostly mine. And so I just, believed in, and what they were doing, and actually TechCXO became one of their first clients. And
Oh wow.
you probably don't know this, but our first intranet was a Google Sites thing, and a bunch of us, and again, 2008, we were probably ten partners by then. I don't know, maybe 12, and we all loaded, data and sharing and stuff like that into this Google site, and then we moved our email over to Gmail, where it is today, right? We were using a hosted Microsoft, Outlook um, solution, and so we became one of their big customers, and then we did some joint marketing with Google and them and things like that. So anyway, they started getting a little bit of traction, and basically in about 2010 we started looking for capital again, and that's when John Hallett uh, invested in the company, and he came on board as the CEO, and he's really the one who he had a lot of venture experience and connections from companies that he'd run, and he drove the mergers and all of that. I was sort of done out after John came in, so which was yeah fine, and really what yeah, it's the business model, right? You're there when they need, as long as they need you, and usually we're the ones who tell them when it's time for us to go. They don't tell us. But so anyway, but Michael and I have been good friends and connections. In fact, I'm having lunch with him the week after next, and I introduced him to some other people. I'm an investor in both of the Overline um, venture funds and things like that, and just really happy with their great success. It took a while, I mean, it took a long time to do that, but I mean, great outcomes take a while.
And the end of the punchline was they sold to Accenture.
Right.
It built it up to like what 1,000 employees or something crazy. Yeah, great success. Um, so um, was there you want to talk about value creation? Do you have a was that one of your better stories, or you have another company that was outstanding in how they went from undervalued or nothing to like insanely great valuation in a relatively quick period of time?
Well, if you didn't add the in a really
Well,
period of time,
uh, 10 years,
I
10
I would
years.
okay, 10 years. That's
Yeah.
quick. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think, I mean, there's been a lot, and sometimes, I mean, in our role as a fractional executive, oftentimes the exit happens after we're gone, right? And this is what I tell the founders when I'm coming on board, right? It's like, I'm probably not going to be here when you have your great exit. Sometimes I am, but if you do it kind of to the real big value creation, I'm here to put the foundation in and get the main walls up on the house and all of that kind of stuff. And then the frame. I'm not here to do your interior decorating per se, And um, so oftentimes we're not there. I was not there when Clearly had their exit and were acquired by IBM, but we had hired a full-time CFO there 2 years before because we had raised a big amount of money and we knew that the next kind of 2-year goal was to position for an exit. And I still was again of counsel. I'm like, if you need me, I'm here, but you need somebody every day. But so probably the best story for me was a company called Boomtown in Charleston, South Carolina, which is sort of how I got my big Charleston connections now. But I met those guys. I'm going to say it again. It was John Yates. Was he has a place in Myrtle Beach, and he would go through Charleston and meet with some of the early stage tech companies because they're back in 2010 or 11, there were a bunch of a bunch, not by Atlanta standards, but a growing group of early stage tech companies, and there were two guys who had come up with a real estate uh, marketing platform called Boomtown, and they were 20 people. They had 40 customers. They were doing on a kind of a $2 million run rate overall when John introduced me, and I just started off, helping them put their first budget together and a monthly reporting package that we then all went out, reviewed with their leadership team, who were all, I mean, everybody was young, right? There was hardly anybody there that was more than about 32, 33 years old in the company, right? And so I was just the wise old man.
Yeah.
Even then, it's like, and just asking a lot of questions like, well, why are you doing this? Or why have you thought about that? And so, they went from 2 million to 4 million to 8 million to 18 million in revenue over in that first few years, and they were growing their customer base, and their customers were real estate agent teams. Their product was a monthly subscription, and it was $1,500 a month. Real estate agents or brokers are cheap, and they go up and down with, oh, business is good, business is not good. I need this, I don't need this. But anyway, I helped them look at their product and their market and kind of dissect it and come up with an entry level, instead of a one size fits all or one price fits all, an entry level, a mid level, and a big level product and pricing, which helped them kind of accelerate, because when you get somebody who's small or two or three people and you can get them on your platform and they start becoming successful, then they're going to move up to the, over time. And so that was really helpful. And then I helped them really design what their internal structure, management structure needed to be, because as was typical early on, you had the CEO, one of the two founders. The other founder was kind of a product guy, and everybody reported to the CEO. And I had a hard time getting a meeting with him the once a month when I was coming down, and I would try 2 or 3 weeks in advance to get on the calendar. One day I came in with a piece of paper and I said, "Well, this is what your org structure looks like right now. Here's you, and here's everybody else, and
Yeah.
you're not helping anybody,
Yeah.
and you're not
Yeah.
spending any time on the business." So, and then I just turned it over and I said, "Here's what your when built org structure is going to look like. You're going to have you're going to have your partner who's product, you're going to have a CTO, you're going to have a CFO, and you're going to have a COO. And then here's the levels below that." And he looked at it and he's like, "Well, which one do I need to hire first?" And I said, "You should hire the COO. Is this person needs to take all this stuff off." And so we went, and he liked it, the idea. We went through a whole process. I helped him interview a bunch of candidates, and we picked somebody, and he was perfect for that role. And I came down like 2 months in, and I got an appointment to meet with Greer, and I said, "So how's it going so far?" He's like, "Oh my God, look at my calendar. Look at all this white space on my calendar. Look at the whiteboard here. I've got all of these ideas and stuff." And so, anyway, those are some of the non-financial things that you can bring as an executive who's been through,
Mm-hmm.
multiple companies of 100 million, $2 billion or whatever, and seeing how some of that stuff works. So, uh, in 2019, well, actually, several times along the way between 2011 and 2019, I said, "It's time for you to hire a full-time CFO." And they said, "No, we're not
Okay.
going to do it. We're not going to do it." And I'm like, starting to spend like a lot of time here, and it's very expensive. And they're like, "We don't care." And
Whoa.
this was
Okay.
also after I helped them raise $20 million that they never actually used, um, but just having it was important. And so in 2019, I said, "I mean it. I mean it.
Yeah.
You guys have to get ready for an exit here." And by then they were like 65 million in revenue. I helped them do a couple of small product acquisitions to expand their product line, all complementary and all that. And so, because I said, you can't just grow this company, organically. And so by the time they sold in 2023, they were, somewhere over 90 million in revenue. They did one more acquisition after I left, helped them find a full-time CFO. They had a very, very good, um, a very, very good exit. So,
Wow.
uh,
Very
yeah.
cool.
So those are two stories of, a number. The fastest sale was a company called FS Logic, where they I got brought in by some of the, I'll call it, seed investors, and then I helped them raise the Series A in like February I don't remember. It's been a few years. So in February, and then in May, one of the largest software companies on the planet came knocking on the door and said, "We want this." Um, and and then I think it was in September or October that the deal closed.
Wow. Oh
So,
man. So it's
but
like a couple,
it wasn't,
3 quarters.
yeah, but it wasn't like a 10x or whatever, but it was a very good return for everybody who had
Heck
invested,
yeah. Yeah.
including myself.
Nice. Well, so those companies, they obviously took your advice. Was there ever a time you think that you gave good advice and they just didn't take it? I know that happens a lot in consulting, and you just kind of go, "Oh, okay." Do you got any stories like that? Where a
Yeah,
client missed it?
yeah. Well, Yeah, there's a lot of them. I mean, I tell many of my clients early on, you don't have to take my advice. You just have to pay for it. And
I'll still be
uh,
your friend. I just
but
want to hear how it works out for you. Right? Yeah.
yeah, but also there's a lot of people who didn't take my advice that are wishing that they had. So,
Yeah.
um, uh, well, I mean, I think there's, a lot of times you're working for entrepreneurs on the second or third time around. And so they have some experience, which, emboldens them to feel like they know everything. And it's not always the case. So I won't name names, but but it's been a long time ago. But there was a company that I got called in by their venture capital firm because they were doing some work in uh, customer contact technology, and like I said, I had worked in the IVR business arena. I had some experience in telecommunication. So, um, but they had this really, I mean, it was really interesting technology and approach to help to basically um, make IVRs more, I'll say, self-service, really self-service. They actually had some people behind the curtain that it was
Okay.
like a game
Okay.
theory solution. And they, instead of like press one and then you get to the next menu and press six and you get to, takes you seven menus to get where you're going. These people basically would try to get you through the menus to the place where expect that you're wanting to go really quick.
Okay. Okay.
And the advice that then so the founder was like, and when people see this, they're going to throw their IVRs out the window, and you know, and we're going to conquer the world. And so, okay, so they were having some issues, and I ended up coming in. I heard all this story, and I said, well, I really like your solution, but your strategy is flawed.
Okay.
And he
Okay.
didn't like hearing that, but I told him why. It was flawed because, the big companies that are buying IVRs are like banks and utility companies and all that. They have tens of millions of dollars invested. And I said, they're not going to stand up at the board meeting and say, we have to get rid of all of this stuff. And we're going to have to take these write-offs and all that because there's something new out there. And said, it's just not going to work. You know, but you can make your solution sit on top of the IVRs and make them better. And over time, as these things, go out to pasture, then you can start taking and doing that. He didn't really want to hear that, and but a year later, he was explaining at a board meeting why they had not made their um, sales goals and things like that, and
Hmm.
it was just almost verbatim the what I had told him. So,
Oh.
but
Yeah.
that company grew over time. It took a while. He was no longer there as part of it, but they did sell the company a couple of years ago.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah. I think I might know who this company is, but we won't name names.
Yeah,
So, one of the things that I've come to realize, there's kind of like, the pinnacle of an individual contributor in the skill, like an accountant, can rise up to a CFO level. And then there's this kind of another gear where tech CXO type people are operating, right? So like it's very common for people to get, yes, you've gone all the way in that individual like swim lane, but you've also got some kind of other discipline in your background. Like you had sales, right? Auditor to sales to CFO is not a traditional like
yeah,
progression, but I think that's very common. And then that's kind of an interesting like take where maybe we all found each other, or maybe I don't know what it is. But there's like a whole different set of advice you get where you have, like a CTO can sell a CFO who's sold, or run the company or run the division. There's a whole done the financial roadshow, internationally. Like it's a whole different skill set that's not common that you get as a complimentary for free, and then, do you think that's a part of why fractional leadership kind of makes sense where, you know, it like your skill set is so deadly early on at exactly the time when they can't afford you full time. So like it's this really interesting juxtaposition of perfect skill set at the right time. Fractional is the way you get it. And onboard it. How do you think about that? Or, you don't need just another really good person with finances. You need really broad
Right.
strategic leadership.
Yeah. Well, and I mean that was my very simple pitch. It's not complicated. And personally, I very rarely, sent out flyers and booklets and all of this other stuff or PowerPoint decks. And we said, look, here's what we do is the skill sets that you need, you can't afford, right? And you, you need somebody like me with my experience, but you can't afford me as a full-time hire. You're a $2 million company. You just can't afford me, right? And the person that you can afford, by definition, does not have the skill sets.
Yeah. Right.
So, so that's what the fractional model is all about. You get exactly what you need at the time in the very small increments of this, right? I mean, somebody needed to help the CEO of Boomtown understand why he was not being helpful to to all of his direct reports because he had so many of them, and literally draw it out on a piece of paper with a pen. And I mean, honestly, everybody who's ever asked me the question, like, what was the best thing the high value you delivered to Boomtown? It was like this piece of paper with two sides on it. That was it.
The napkin.
Right. The
Yeah.
napkin. I
Yeah.
did help them raise some capital, but they had a really good business. I mean, people were actually lining up to raise capital. We had done a good job of making their name well known in the venture community, and people were calling us, and we were going like, no, we're not ready. We're not ready. We're not ready. And they would just keep calling back. And it was like, what you can't have is what you really want. Right. And so we had a lot of people that, that were like, I want to be, when you're ready, I want to be part of it. And so, there were little bits of things here and there. And then it got to the point where, they needed somebody full time, and they were able to pay up for the experience. And they hired somebody who'd been through some M&A transactions and raised some capital, and was a pretty, a good operational CFO at that point of time.
Um, want to ask, I kind of want to veer off this a little bit. But something that a lot of people I deal with a lot of very early stage folks. And the idea of fundraising comes up, and then it's like this constantly changing game. Um, seed, pre-seed, angel, whatever you're calling it this year, I don't know. And then people are saying VCs aren't investing as much as they used to. I don't know if that's true or not. Private equity's kind of come down, but there's not any exits anymore, so that's kind of gummed up. It's, you know, there's no mulligans right now, so there's no do-overs so you got to really, you know, hit it down the middle of the fairway to be investable. All these are thoughts and things that people talk about. Atlanta, you can't raise money. Yes, you can. What are your thoughts on the current, like, where are we with all this state of investments, or how do companies get off the ground? Do you just have to know a guy and then, get done more, do more with less, with a little bit of friends and family money until you can really get going? Or like, what's the kind of current thought for, a good solid company with a good team, with great idea and a little bit of execution? Is that fundable, or where would you go, or what advice would you give to those kind of companies?
Well, it's a lot easier to start a company today than it was 10 years ago,
For
right?
sure. Absolutely.
Because you don't have to have infrastructure or any of that stuff. We can sit here, on Zoom and have a company, and then you just and then you have a fraction of an AWS, server. And you have a whole bunch of fractions. You try to put them together. So by nature, there's a lot more companies out there. And I think, the unfortunate thing is not there's not enough money out there to fund every company. And everybody that's got a good idea is not going to get funded, even though there's good ideas. I have failed to help some companies that I thought had really good ideas. And I mean, I've seen enough to, I think, be not an expert, but I have a pretty good feel for what's a good idea, what's not a good idea. So, I mean, you can start from the top side on PEs. I mean, the IPO window has been relatively shut, except for some of the biggest deals, and so the PEs can't get liquidity. So therefore, they are the ones who are buying the ones that the companies that say growth equity venture and growth equity have been, funding. So there's no money going circulating back to the limited partners who invest in, Fund 17 or whatever the next fund is. And so, and it's hard to raise money in that kind of environment. And, there are so many small companies that are looking. I mean, that's what created, I'll call it seed stage. That wasn't even a word
Yeah. Right.
10 years ago, right? It was like, oh
Right.
yeah, we're going to go raise a Series A. It's going to be $2 million, right? And today, $2 million is like a little seed stage. So I think, things have got to loosen up a little bit. I think there's a lot of, uncertainty in the financial markets and the world markets and all of that kind of stuff that's just making it difficult. Coming out of the 2007, 8, 9 kind of period, a lot of companies were forced to bootstrap, right? And I mean, I'll go back to the Cloud Sherpas example. Um, I think each of the founders put in like 50 grand of their own money in to start this thing up. I helped them add another couple $100,000, and that got us, 2 years. Yeah, and I don't know if it was at the ATDC, but where you were meeting with them in this building, but it was I got them a little space in Buckhead,
Yeah. That's where
uh,
we saw him.
in
Yeah.
Buckhead on Maple Drive, because my friend owned the building.
Okay.
And I said, do you have any vacant space? They don't need very much. He's like, well, I got this space, but I may have somebody that wants to move into it. If they're flexible, I can charge them by the head, right? And so that's like predates like the Tech Village
Yeah.
model where you pay
Yeah.
by where you pay by the head, and they were paying like $150 a month per employee for this space, right? It was four of them at the beginning, and and so on and so forth. So it became, and so you have to learn how to bootstrap in order to survive. And and I think that's really we got to come back to that, because we had a lot of money that was being invested in the last several years. There was a halt at early part of COVID, and then there was a waterfall, and now there is a pause. It's slow. So you just have to be, you can't go out and start spending money and to grow. It's got to be really, really, tight.
Yeah. Well, let me bounce something off you. So in when like the cloud came, AWS came and was a thing, that was right around when Cloud Sherpas was getting going. AWS was S3 and EC2 and not much else. And it's like, but it became, that was a huge game changer. You didn't need to raise 5 million. you need to raise 1 million, to get going. And then that was a huge quantum shift, and you could do way more. Still had to have a pizza box rack somewhere, maybe in a colo. You probably had to have an office. You probably had to have phones where you actually pick them up and to call, and then you had to drive places. And, you know, um, I think,
You had to go meet
um,
with people.
yeah. And then, so I'm seeing something right now that's kind of an echo of that, where, everybody's talking about AI, but, with these AI coding tools and AI marketing tools and AI blah, blah, blah tools, it's kind of the same thing over again. If people can leverage those, it's an operational lever that really good people can become really great people in a hurry for a lot less money. Um, and I feel like you can get people through those initial proof points to become investable, where you can build a product in 2 weeks, maybe, as an MVP. You could start selling. Can that founder sell to 10 people? It's kind of one of my metrics. I'd be interested to hear yours. And then, will the dogs eat the dog food? Do you have product market fit? In terms of, do you get do the some of those 10 people you sold to get angry if you take away the product? What I guess, there's a couple things there. The cycles are going to compress. If you can't get to 1 million, what's wrong with you in revenue? In a year or half a year or something ridiculous. But so there's a lot more pressure. Yes, you can start, but yes, you're going to get required to go faster. And I guess the second, maybe kind of bounce off that, and then the second part is, kind of what metrics do you see? Like, what heuristics do you kind of look for, when you're looking at these companies going, that one's going to make it, and like that one's not. Maybe start with the first. Like, are we seeing compressions of these cycles, and is that good or bad? With AI leverage.
Well, I mean, I think the improvements in productivities are are very positive. I mean, I'm on the board of a tech-enabled healthcare solution service company, and they had part of what they do is they reach out to patients of doctor practices and to check on them. Are you taking your medicine? Or have you done your blood pressure? Blah blah blah, all that. And it used to be, people picking up the phone and calling. Now they have AI agent that does all of that, gets all the information, and updates the doctor's records and all of this stuff. So they've been able to to, I'll call it, reduce costs or do more with the same. And it's been really and it's been done in a 6 month, 8 month period of time. Big impact on margins. So and I think the ability to bring things to market. I'm not going to go into the whether or not AI is good or bad or whatever, but I mean, the challenge is, though, is that the challenge that companies are going to have, I still think, is, okay, you're doing it, you're using AI, or you're coming to market in a short period of time. Why can't you get to $1 million in revenue? Well, because there's 20 other people that are doing that are had the same idea, right? Like, when Alexander Graham Bell went to the patent office for a patent on the telephone, somebody else came in like an hour later with the same thing. So there's competition, and if you've got a whole, 1,000 itty bitty companies that are doing something similar, they're all going to struggle, right? And so there's going to have to be some kind of consolidation. Now, whether or not, and maybe that's the opportunity for private equity or whatever, but that's a lot of work, trying to do that. And so I think the reality is that not all companies with good ideas are going to get funded. And now, because it's so easy or quick to take your good idea and turn it into a pilot or something like that. But, big companies which drive big revenue numbers are very nervous about taking mission critical, tasks and handing them off to AI, an AI solution, right? So I think it's going to have to come from the ground up, and there's gonna end up being a bunch of fallout. And the ones that are nimble and strong will survive. And the metric thing is, what is your business model? Can you scale? You've got it's all really it's about sales and marketing. If you got a good product, then it becomes sales and marketing. How much does it cost? What's your customer acquisition costs, and what's your lifetime value of a customer? And because there's a lot of companies that are out there that have don't have great margins. I mean, now in an AI world, I mean, gross margins need to be 90%, right? Whereas the old software industry, if you were in the software industry, you were 50%, you were doing pretty good. And then in SaaS, it needed to be, depending on what kind of solution it was and how much effort was involved, it's 60 to 75% or higher. And you got to be able to be profitable when you start, not dialing back sales and marketing, but expense, but customer retention, layering on that next set, and getting to profitability quickly. You can't be losing money for 5 years anymore.
So I've got this kind of theory that, AI, some of these AI tools make people more efficient. So I haven't wanted to code for a while, and I tell people you should not pay me to code. This year that changed.
I tell people
Where
that you can't pay me, should not pay me to go into QuickBooks. So
yeah, but 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 you need, if I can direct some people, like I have these coding agents, or you have some of this AI that can go do some of those things for you. That's all of a sudden flipped, where you can have a very experienced person doing some of these individual contributor type things in the background, automated. If that's true, if you buy that, which I think we're going to get there, I think it's the early days. There's, used to be, you started, everybody liked to fund a couple of real genius like Larry Page, and Sergey Brin, because they were poor, hungry grad students and they were cheap,
right.
and they could like grind it out and then make a bunch of software. Well, what if the cost of software goes to almost nothing? And then wouldn't you rather have some very experienced entrepreneurs, running the business, and then not pay for the software development anymore, or the product development, but pay for the distribution and the connections and the experience of, well, we know how to quickly get to the message and the distribution and how to sell it and position it and price it and all the kind of things you can't just kind of luck into. It requires experience.
No,
And
I
then
think those are the
yeah.
those are the ones who are going to be the winners. Is the ones who can quickly gobble up market share through their sales and marketing, experience.
Um, well, so you got any wisdom for the next generation, or maybe some thoughts on the future of venture and consulting in general that you want to share?
Well, I mean, in the early day, back in 2007 and 2008, when the world was, like teetering financially, we had all of our partners, all but eight or nine of us, we had these conversations about should we dial back, growing our business, right? Because we had gone from 3 to 5 to 8 or 9 or 10 at that time, and I think the conversation ended up with, companies are going to need us more than ever in these bad times and these difficult times, because they're not going to have the money, they're not going to have venture capital. The VCs are going to have a small amount of money to spread around to take care of their existing portfolios, and so so basically we decided to keep going forward and growing our business, bringing more partners on, and we had more work than we could handle at the time. And then when COVID came, it was very similar. I mean, there was just a shock, I think, for the first couple of months, but then everybody was like, We have to reforecast. We have to relook at our all of our business metrics. We have to do all of this stuff, right? And so, you can't wait and go like, oh, I got to go out and hire, a CFO, which will take you 6 months or whatever to do. I mean, they needed answers like, in hours today. So, I think the consulting model, whether it's big consulting, but certainly on a fractional basis, has a lot of legs, and actually very that fits in very well in times of uncertainty because you're not making a big financial commitment. I come in with my backpack and I tell them, yeah, I don't have you may give me a desk, but it's not an office. I'm not putting any photos of my kids or any of that kind of stuff. And, you can give me 15 minutes notice and tell me that you don't need me anymore, and I'll pick up my backpack and go. Right. So that model, it still works as well, or maybe even better for us. It's better because now we have TechCXO has such a broad, diverse group of skill sets that we can bring in. I mean, you can bring in somebody for 2 hours to address a very specific need or topic. And so, we're, we don't have, nobody's having to fake it because, the client has a problem and we don't have, I don't know the answer. I just go out and say, who knows the answer to this and can help my client.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, I have one other kind of weird question that one of our partners asked. What did you learn from owning a microbrewery?
Well, I mean, I'm still involved in it, so I don't think all my learnings are over. But certainly, I learned the look deeper before you leap. Was one of the things, and craft brewing is a very capital intensive business, not way more intensive than anything that I've ever been involved in before, even on a small scale. So, and the other thing is that in the last few years, you got to look at the market, really look at the market, because in the last few years, just universally, consumption of alcohol and beer as part of that category has been flat to down,
Okay.
as the young people are looking at alternative, beverages and things like that that are non-alcoholic. So, whereas our generation is, I mean, we grew up drinking beer and whatever, but the younger people, yeah, the 20s and 30s are not doing it as much. So,
Yeah. Hmm.
um, yeah, so it's a challenge, but there are different business models where you can be successful. So that's another learning that I'm still learning.
Yeah. Well, it's about travel and getting out there in the world, and we'd love to hear some of your travel stories if you'd like to share a couple.
Well, like I said, I've just come back a couple of weeks ago from two weeks in Costa Rica. We're really getting to enjoy the culture there and the beauty of sunsets over the Pacific Ocean, and all of that. But I guess I've been doing a lot of traveling the last 2 years. I think 2 years ago, this month, my family and took my family on a 20-day trip to Vietnam, Thailand, and Korea. And I'd never been to Asia before, and it was just really fantastic. I know a lot. I've known a lot of people who've been there, so I was able to kind of get some tips. And we spent 3 days in Hanoi, Vietnam, and it was just the most spectacular experience. Not, everybody our age, I guess, grows up, watching the Vietnam War and all of that, but it's just a totally different place. Even though it's communist, politically or whatever, the people are so happy. They're very nice. We were only in Hanoi, because we spent most of our time in Thailand. Uh, but I mean, food was good, place is clean, everybody is helpful. It was just really fantastic, beautiful country. And then then we went to Bangkok, Chiang Mai, and Phuket, Thailand. And big part of the trip was I'm a scuba diver, and Phuket scuba diving was on my bucket list, one of my last two bucket list scuba places. And so I got to go scuba diving. My younger son got certified just before the trip, and it was Thailand was great. I don't have to go back to Bangkok. It's, got 10 million people, and it's loud and noisy and whatever, but the food is really good. Chiang Mai is a much nicer kind of town and city in the north, and yeah, it was just fantastic. And then we spent the last 2 days in Seoul, Korea. It was no, the end of November, so it was much colder up there in the north, but the people were really fantastic, and we just had a great time. So yeah, so that was our big trip 2 years ago. We've gone on a few others, but right now it's kind of back and forth to Costa Rica, getting our house there in order.
Nice. Well, Neal, it's been great having you here in the Sky Lounge. And if people want to follow up with you after this, what's a great way to get in touch with you on the internet?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. So I have LinkedIn, and then I'm still on the TechCXO website, on the Meet Our Executives. So I have a partner page there that has contact information as well.
Well, great. Thanks, Neal. And
Thank you, Todd.
bye, bye
Appreciate
for
it.
now.
All right.
Thanks for joining us in the Sky Lounge. Please like and subscribe to hear more from Tales from the Sky Lounge here and anywhere else you get your podcasts.